everyone's always like, you should get married. Why haven't you started dating anyone? And then you're dating people and you're like, this is what's available to me. This idiot. You know, this is why I'm not married. Everyone's
hot,
an idiot.
though.
Hot. You're right. Absolutely hot.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Off to Broadway, the podcast where we deep dive into anything and everything musical theater from the comfort of my car. I'm Tara.
I'm Stefania.
And in today's episode, I feel like this is much anticipated, specifically for you, Steph, but this was something on our 2020 spreadsheet, and it finally happened. We're talking about Company. Before we talk about Company, let's do some housekeeping because it's like been a bit since we've talked about things and things have changed. So a couple episodes ago, we did our Anne Juliet episode, and we pre-recorded that. We've pre-recorded a ton of episodes because on day of release, I'm on vacation. So we pre-recorded a lot of stuff, and it just so happened that, as we said on that episode, we saw first preview of Anne Juliet, and that entire episode we were speculating when it would go to Broadway. We knew it's pre-Broadway, but like, when is it happening? And then literally a week later, we found out Anne Juliet is transferring to the Stephen Sondheim Theater. Wow, so fitting that that's where it's going.
the Doubtfire stuff is still on the theater right now.
Well, it hasn't been closed for that long.
No. But like Rob McClure's in a new show already, so
I know, that's true.
It's been enough time.
Yeah. So Anne Juliet is transferring to the Stephen Sondheim Theater. It starts previews October 28th, and then it opens, I'm pretty sure I think it's November 16th, mid-November. Don't quote me on that. And that whole cast is going, from what we understand, which is so super exciting. Also, in that episode when we recorded, Steph had seen Anne Juliet twice. Now, as a collective podcast, Shar is at Anne Juliet again tonight. We will have seen it 9 times. So, and we like the show a little bit.
When this episode is out, will it be closed here in Toronto?
It will be closed.
Okay,
and
so
I would like to congratulate them on a very successful Toronto pre-Broadway run.
So there's no use in complaining about the increasing rush prices?
I think we can briefly complain about it because I feel like I lied to everybody when I said that this ticket was $39, and then towards the end of the run, it moved up to $59, and now, I mean, we don't know. Maybe it will go up again by the time... we're recording on July 27th. This closes on August 14th, so I don't know if there's going to be another price increase, but it's currently sitting at $79 for a rush ticket.
For rush tickets. That's just not a rush price. As I did pay $79 rush for Company, but they did offer $43 rush. They offer options. There are options.
There's no option for this, which is disappointing. I did reach out to ask if this was something that would go back to the way it was, and the response was that this was not a Mirvish decision. This is a producer's decision. So this also kind of makes me think, like, what's going to be the rush price once it hits Broadway?
Yeah, it's very odd. Maybe they won't do a rush. Maybe they'll do a lottery. They'll probably see what their sales are like.
Yeah. I do know that when it was announced, Today Tix was doing a special. All tickets were like $89. So
amazing.
I don't know if that's still running, but I do know it's like pretty readily available. And if you want to hear our full thoughts on that, go listen to that episode. But also, like, if you're going to be in New York, go see this cast because they're amazing. I want to take my brother to see it when we go to like visit him in New York again because I think he would enjoy.
Sure. So
funny, like everyone that I've recommended it to has loved it. So I feel like that's a win for me.
Absolutely. Your taste is being proven.
Exactly. And then some more housekeeping. Steph just came back from New York. So how was your trip?
It was great. It was hot. It was really hot. It was a whirlwind. You know, we got it on Friday morning. We flew out Sunday night, so we were there one full day, honestly.
Okay, so in order of what you saw, give us the weekend.
Okay, so the weekend. Friday night. Thursday, I'm just running errands, getting ready to go. My dad texts me and says...
No, go back. Let's talk about your mom texting you on Thursday and the drama that I was pulled into.
Oh, she's going to listen to this. My mom texts me a link on Thursday.
Yeah. From Broadway Direct.
From Broadway Direct. It just says like Broadway Direct success. So I'm thinking, my mom won the lottery. It was like 2:30. My mom won a lottery. So I'm texting her, which lottery is it? What's happening? What's going on? I can't open the link. The link's not working.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I'm like at the mall. I'm like, well, trying to do something. I'm like texting Tara. I'm like, I think my mom won a lottery, but I don't know what it is. The link's not working.
So I was like, send me the link because I'm on like a desktop computer. Like maybe you're at the mall and there's like no connection. Like send me the link. I open it, nothing.
I give her like my mom's like account information for Lucky Seat. She's logging in. She's like, there's nothing here. There's nothing here. Anyway, I finally get a hold of my mom. I call her and she's like, oh, 6 texted me saying that I successfully entered the lottery. And I was like, great. Okay. No problem. And I hung up.
The way I was about to purchase these tickets for you because I was like, you have 60 minutes. Like, there's no time. We thought it would be the options. We narrowed it down.
Not Lucky Seat, but...
we're 6 and M. Yeah, we're 6 and MJ because I was like, you didn't enter Aladdin, you didn't enter Beetlejuice, like you didn't enter all of these. There's only 2 options here. I think the
confusion is because I just entered everything for my parents. I was with my parents. I entered everything for my parents. I didn't involve them really. Yeah. I just entered everything for my parents.
Right.
So then there's actually quite the lottery saga this week.
I know.
Because then about an hour later, I'm still in the car. My dad texts me and he's like, I got a text from Into the Woods, and I'm like no context, that's it. I'm like, you won? Buy them. I call him. I'm like, you need to buy them. And he's like, oh, how many? I'm like, you can only buy 2. You can only buy 2. Just buy 2. But we're 3 people. Just buy 2. We'll figure it out. Okay.
Also, when you texted me, I was like, is this another, like, successful entry? Like, no, for real this time.
Dad bought the 2 Into the Woods lottery tickets, so that means on Friday night, I saw Into the Woods.
Amazing.
Before I talk about Into the Woods, as Into the Woods ended, so my parents ended up sitting in the box seats, which are the lottery seats, and I sat in a single ticket that we bought somewhere else. And after the show was over, my mom comes out upset because she's like, we won the Moulin Rouge lottery and we didn't see it until now. So truly what a weekend. So they ended up seeing Moulin Rouge the next day, but not on lottery tickets, which they had won.
Okay, before you go through your thoughts, just give us the full
So the weekend, Friday night, Into the Woods. Saturday afternoon, brand new musical, Between the Lines.
Off-Broadway.
Off-Broadway. A second stage theater. Saturday night, The Reason for the Season, Company on Broadway, and it's second to last week.
Yeah.
And finally, Sunday matinee, so it was at 3:00, our flight was at 8, and the show started like 20 minutes late. So as the show was ending, I was the first person out of that theater. And I run back to the hotel. The band was still playing the outro. I never
And you
leave.
still managed to get a curtain call video.
I know I did. The band was still playing. I never leave when the band is playing the outro because I like it. I like
clap at the end.
I was that first person out of the theater. I was down the street. The band is still playing. A strange loop.
And then your parents saw Moulin Rouge on Saturday as well.
Yeah, on Saturday afternoon they saw Moulin Rouge. And on Sunday afternoon they saw The Play That Goes Wrong off Broadway. So true theater-filled weekend. Theater-filled weekend.
So, like we did with my rankings of New York theater, I want to know what was your favorite, and then what was the like most recommended, and like same question, I guess, for your mom. Sorry to Peter if you're listening, but like we know you fell asleep during these shows.
They're long. We were tired. Dad did not have the energy for the weekend. Okay.
But I also wanted to guess like your mom's ranking, so I don't know how we do this properly.
Okay. My rankings. Let me start at the bottom. I think this is like.
Wait. Let me guess.
Okay.
Okay. At the bottom, I would say is Between the Lines.
Correct. Between the Lines. That does not mean it was bad. I have many thoughts on it, but it is the clear bottom.
Okay. Next, I'm like, what did you see? Ooh, this is hard. Between Into the Woods, really A Strange Loop, and Company.
I have to be honest, these 3 were all amazing. Every, really, amazing shows. So it's really hard, but I did come up with a ranking.
I want to say next is A Strange Loop.
Incorrect.
Into the Woods.
Into the Woods is the next one. And
okay.
That's crazy because it was amazing.
Also, wow, day of recording, July 27th, Into the Woods just announced an extension. 8 more weeks at the St. James. They're now closing in October.
Do you think it's going to extend longer?
I heard January, so I think maybe. Well. And also,
they'll see how this run goes.
I saw a tweet today which is very reminiscent of our last episode, Chicago. Someone was like, stunt cast it up. I'm ready for it.
Do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll talk about Into the Woods.
It's pretty stunt casted right now, but like stunt cast it up. I also would like to personally congratulate you on seeing Gavin Creel in a show.
Finally. It was the moment. I thought he was going to be out. I really thought he was going to be out because he's starting on Sunday. Cheyenne Jackson took over for him for 10 days, so I really thought he was not going to be there. And he was there in his platinum blonde hair and everything.
Yeah. Sadly, Sarah Bareilles was out, but...
She was sick the whole week, but she's back. She was back last night.
Yeah.
But
and then...
the understudy was wonderful. She was truly wonderful.
And then A Strange Loop and then Company.
Yes. That's the pretty standard ranking.
Your mom's ranking...
So just to recap, my mom saw Into the Woods, she saw Moulin Rouge, she saw Company, she saw The Play That Goes Wrong.
What a weekend.
So I think there's a clear bottom for mom as well.
The Play That Goes Wrong.
That is the clear bottom for mom, correct.
But did she enjoy it? I just need to know, personally.
She did not.
Oh my god, but we gave like such high praise.
We did. We're in the taxi on the way to the hotel, she throws the play ball. She's like, what did you send me to?
Oh my god! Wow, that makes me sad. I love The Play That Goes Wrong.
Me too. I really thought they would like it. I'm like,
but I guess like
farce.
After seeing everything that she saw, like that is
She's like, they were in the second row, so sometimes they thought they were gonna like hit by debris flying.
That's funny.
And I'm like, how is everyone else in the audience reacting? She's like, eating it up. And I'm like, exactly. So you're the weird one.
Oh my god, that was like literally what a throwback. That was like one of our, I think it was our second episode we talked about The Play That Goes Wrong. I love that show. I would see it again.
It was so funny.
Yeah.
It was so funny.
Okay, so clear bottom. I'm so sorry that she didn't like that. I feel like I'm also feel a little responsible for that because I was like, they would love it.
I was like, it's so fun. And
yeah,
I'll talk about it later. But yeah, I think that it was a good recommendation, but it just did not work out. But okay.
Okay, next I would say Moulin Rouge.
Correct.
Which is like shocking to me, but like it's fine. I'm over it. I was wounded, but I'm over it.
She came back to the hotel because we saw separate things. She came back to the hotel being like, it was great. I have notes, but it was great. And I'm
we
like,
all have notes.
There are notes to have,
but we look past.
Yeah, they're really not important.
Which is actually so funny because my parents saw Moulin Rouge the weekend before, literally like a week before, with my brother. And my brother, who doesn't see a lot of theater, a very quiet person, was like, I think that's the best thing I've ever seen.
Wow.
Yeah.
My
just as like spectacle.
Sure. My parents were also second row.
Yeah,
mezzanine.
My parents and Tyler were fourth row
Center.
mezzanine. Yeah.
And also, this is an interesting thing. So the top two are clearly like Company and Into the Woods, but she said she doesn't need to see those again, but she would see Moulin Rouge again.
We love that.
Yeah. Okay, go on. What do you think was number 2? What was number 1 for Mom?
I think number 2 is Company. Number 1 is Into the Woods.
Flop it. She said Company was the best.
Wow. We'll get to...
She wasn't crazy about... She loved Act 1 of Into the Woods, and she did not like Act 2 of Into the Woods.
What did I tell you? I knew this would happen. Because Act 2 is a completely different show.
Act 2 is different. Act 2 is really, really different.
Yeah.
So especially... And, like, it's a really departure. So, yeah, that was kind of, I think, the reasoning.
Okay, so now the question of... we know your favorite was Company, but what's the one that you would recommend? To someone random on the street.
Oh, this is really difficult. I actually do still think the recommendation would be Company.
Wow.
Which, unfortunately, you can't see.
No.
I think A Strange Loop, I don't think you can just recommend that to a rando. It's just a tough one, which is why I'm, like, somewhat questioning its longevity on Broadway. The whole time I was like, I cannot believe this is on Broadway. I cannot believe this is on Broadway. Mm-hmm. In a great way, but I was like, I cannot believe it's here. So if I knew someone really well, I might recommend it to them, but I wouldn't be recommending it to, like, anyone. Yeah. Between the Lines was fine. Like, I wouldn't deter anyone, but I wouldn't tell someone to, like, buy a full price
Run
ticket.
to it. Right.
Both of these were really amazing. I just love Company, and, like, a recommendation from me, like, I feel like it would tell people things about me for me to recommend Company to them. Maybe too personal.
I mean, what a segue. What a segue. Let's get into it.
Let's go.
We will revisit New York, I'm sure, at the end of this episode as we approach Obsessions. But yeah, so Company closed on Broadway July 31st, so about a month ago when this episode comes out. And I feel like when this was announced, it was like a little bit surprising, and also immediately you were like, I gotta go. Like, I have to see this. And I had read that it was the producing team, like, trying to get ahead of what could be a very destructive, devastating fall and winter. So I get it. It's also going on tour, no?
I mean, I think they've announced a plan to tour, but who knows if that doesn't always happen. It just doesn't always happen.
And also, like, we will talk about this in depth, but you can't bring that set everywhere.
Yeah, I'd be very curious about that giant box. What to do. Obviously, like, the trapdoor stuff you wouldn't do, which, like, a lot of shows get around that on tour. But that giant box is, I think, the biggest problem.
Okay, so, Steph, since you are, like, the company aficionado, I feel like lead this episode. Take it away.
So, I think I want to start with kind of what we talk about every time we talk about a musical. What was your first introduction to company? Or should I say mine, and then you can...
I can say it in 1 second. You were my first introduction to company.
It was me.
Yeah, seriously.
I believe it. That was what I thought, honestly, when I was, like, writing my notes for this episode.
It was Being Alive in the car. Like,
Being
specifically, Alive. That's what the introduction was, yeah.
Being Alive was my first introduction to company. I don't know where. I do not know where I heard Being Alive for the first time. I could not tell you. It might have just been a random playlist, a YouTube rabbit hole. I don't know the first time I heard Being Alive. But I do know that, like, without knowing anything about the show or the context, like, I just immediately, like, loved that song. And I was like, I need to know more. It was also, like, the Raul Esparza recording, which, obviously, amazing.
Yeah.
And I just, like, deeply, like, felt that song. And so I was like, I need to know more. I need to know more. There are 2 filmed versions of Company that are available. One is the 2006 Broadway revival starring Raul Esparza, directed by John Doyle, and the other is the 2011 New York Philharmonic concert starring Neil Patrick Harris. And I took both of those on DVD out from my local public library, and I watched them, like, over and over and over again on TV.
The John Doyle one, they all play instruments on stage, right?
Right, that's kind of a John Doyle signature, because recent Assassins is as well. Yeah. Sweeney Todd, his revival was the actor-musicians, and I think the metaphor of the actors in this production of Company playing the instruments and Bobby being the only one not to play until, like, that final moment works really, really well. And it's also very black and white. It's very minimalist. What theater was it at? Because I was watching some clips of the video earlier, and I was like, what theater is this
I don't know.
I'm on Wikipedia. I'm trying to find out. The Barrymore. Which I don't think I've ever been in.
Small. I saw Band's Visit there.
Right.
That's where Into the Woods is kicking out the piano lesson for that to go to the Barrymore.
Right. You can live to the Barrymore. I'd never been in the St. James either. I'd never been in any of the theaters I was in this weekend. So
wow.
Yeah, all new. So I would take those videos out from the library and watch them over and over and over again, and just fell in love with that show. I think I specifically love the 2006 version more than the 2011 version. But both of them, I love that they're so different, and, like, immediately showed me how you could take the same source material and present it in these completely different ways, just 5 years apart. And then this recent production that started in 2018 in the West End is also a complete reimagining, not even just gender swapping Bobby, but the staging of it, the way that the characters are presented. And then also we're very lucky to have the original cast album documentary of the recording of the original cast album. So there was a lot out there of, like, footage of Company that you can see, and you can see all these different productions and all these different interpretations of it. And then also the PBS documentary that came out this year, kind of that pulls all these threads together and compares them all to each other and talks about the process of putting it together. So let's talk about this production of it.
I mean, first, for anyone that doesn't know about what Company is, give us a 30-second synopsis.
Okay, well, I'm going to read Stephen himself's summary in his book, Finishing the Hat, because this is a bit of a plotless musical. It's what you'd call a concept musical. So here's the summary. A man with no emotional commitments reassesses his life on his 35th birthday by reviewing his relationships with his married acquaintances and his girlfriends. That is the entire plot, which is no plot.
That's pretty much what happens.
That is what happens. And what Stephen Sondheim said in the PBS documentary is that the whole musical takes place in 3 seconds in Bobby's mind, imagining what's going to happen on the night of his 35th birthday and flashing back to moments in relationships with all his friends. And it's, like, opening the door or thinking he's going to open the door, or she is going to open the door to a surprise party, and what's running through Bobby's mind in that moment.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of attempting to decipher one person's thought process, and it's not necessarily linear. I think the most interesting thing about this production is that Bobby has always been played by a man. Bobby has been a man, and yet I believe it was 2016 when Marianne Elliott was approached to reimagine Company with a woman, and then they had to convince Stephen Sondheim to do it. So they did that first workshop in 2016, and there's some clips in that PBS documentary. And I think, for me, I love Company, but I don't know if it's ever worked better
than this
story-wise than this version, and having a woman at the center, especially in modern times with the kind of expectations put on women and like their role in society and how they feel and relate to other people. And maybe that just comes from me as a woman. That's much more relatable. But I've always been a woman, and I've always related to Bobby, even when he was played by a man. So those undercurrents were always there, and now they're just like the text instead of the subtext.
It's also interesting because I feel like when this was first proposed, I mean, there's always been like, I agree, there's always been this conversation, and I also agree that I don't think it's like as much pressure on a man than it is on a woman. Like, someone correct us if you've had a different experience than like other women have, but I think it's interesting that like these initial conversations happen in 2016, and then to also think that like sadly this is now closed when maybe we need this conversation more than ever.
Well, something that is again, correct me if I'm wrong, that I don't think has ever been in any other version, but the like ticking of the clock motif that keeps happening, and then you hear the baby's cries in the background, and then that comes to a head in the moment of TikTok, which in the original version was a dance number for Donna McKechnie, who was playing Kathy, and sometimes it's cut from the production because you don't always need it, but in this one, Marianne Elliott was like, there's a song called TikTok, and she's just like, the biological clock that women are faced with. If Bobby is 35, you know, everyone's telling her, you know, if you want to have kids, if you want to have a family, like, you got to get a move on.
You're running out of time. And it's also,
even if people aren't, like, explicitly telling you that, as a woman, like...
It's just in your head.
You're thinking that because society has told you that your entire life. And, I mean, to bring it to modern times, like, with the overturning of Roe versus Wade in the United States, like, a woman's reproductive choices are, like, under attack, we're lucky to live in Canada, but are under, you know, scrutiny, and those choices are not necessarily as much as they were, you know, just a few months ago. And so I think it brings it even more.
Yeah. And then in the same vein of that, like, how many times have you been told in your life that, like, your career ends at 50? Like, depending on what you do.
Sure.
Like,
I mean, especially, like, the industry that you're in, for sure.
I was told in broadcasting school that, like, if you think that you're going to be on camera at the age of 55 as a woman in the industry, like, you're in the wrong industry. And to hear that before I even graduated was like, what am I even getting myself into? I didn't end up going the on-air route, but, like, I know a lot of people that did, and there's always that, like, countdown clock in your head. So I agree to have the ticking, which is, like, kind of interesting. Again, thinking that, like, Tick Tick Boom was brought out, like, this year as well, to think that, like, those two came out at the same time.
Tick Tick Boom, in my view, was inspired by Company because, one, Jonathan Larson, hugely inspired by Stephen Sondheim. Number two, it's centered around his 30th birthday and the idea of that being a deadline for him. And even though it was a different kind of deadline, it was a career deadline versus, like, a relationship deadline, there are, like, clear through lines from Tick Tick Boom that come straight from Company. And I think it's also funny that Raul Esparza, you know, was in that original off-Broadway cast of Tick Tick Boom when it was rewritten into that 3-person version. And then a few years later, you know, we watched him turn 30 on stage, and then a few years later we watched him turn 35 on stage in that revival of Company. And I'm always happy to hear him sing, so...
We'll take it whenever we can get it.
No complaints. I also loved that TikTok sequence. I mean, I texted you earlier today because I was just thinking about it as I was listening to the West End cast recording, that Claiborne Elder disappearing from the bed and reappearing out the door is on par with everything happening in Harry Potter and the Cursed Child.
And again, I had texted you this, and I want to publicly say it on the podcast. We will be doing a Harry Potter episode, so
absolutely.
we will get into the magic of Cursed Child. But some of the stuff, and I'll bring in like Anne Juliet too, that double turntable that rises, I'll take that any day over seeing magic on stage for Cursed Child. Watching Claiborne Elder like somehow disappear out of that bed, watching him open doors, come back in. When we talk about the sets of this show, that's better than half of the stuff I saw on stage in Cursed Child. So like, it's so interesting to think about like,
well, I think
the awe factor almost, you know?
Well, I think to draw a direct comparison, I think a lot of what's happening in Cursed Child feels gimmicky, whereas everything set-wise that's happening in the show feels so purposeful, feels so intentional, feels
smart,
necessary to the storytelling. Every movement of the set, every way it transitions, the style, the way it's designed, the colors, the way that the number 35 is everywhere, on the clock,
everywhere,
on the painting, on the doors, the balloons. It feels so intentional. It's telling a story, whereas you know, sometimes tricks are used as like wow factor or gimmicky and are not necessarily, you know, bringing you along the story and necessary to convey the message the way that they are in this show. The way I feel Marianne Elliott, everything is so intentional. Can we talk about Marianne Elliott for a minute?
Yeah.
Because I've seen 2 of her other shows before, both plays. Warhorse, I saw the
Me too, I've seen them both also.
I love Warhorse, and Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, which I saw in the West End, which I was obsessed with Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. It was so good.
I saw it on Broadway, and then I also saw it when Mirvish brought their production here, and I saw it with my mom on Broadway, I saw it with my dad in Toronto, and both of them were like just amazed by the sets, and I just think that like obviously like Bunny Christie, who did the sets for Company, like all set
and
credit.
Costume design, so
all credit to her. But I do think that that's a like extreme collaboration with Marianne Elliott and like her brain of like, this is what I want it to look like, and like make it come to life.
Yeah, all 3 of those shows, the through line is these like huge visuals that are telling the story. The puppets in Warhorse, I just remember I sat front row because I rushed it. It was the first thing I ever rushed, was Warhorse in Toronto.
Wow.
And I said, because I was like first in line, so I sat front row center, and the way the horses just like came directly at us.
It was amazing. That was the first time, because we have aisle seats for subscription, and I remember at the top of the show the usher coming over being like, you need to keep your legs in the seats because the horses come down the aisle.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's so fun. So her direction is so evident, and her identity is so evident, and I know Patti LuPone agreed to do this because she wanted to work with Marianne.
Yeah, that's huge.
I think after seeing one of those shows, so I think like her name being attached to it had everyone involved like put a lot of trust, and you know, something that could have sounded gimmicky, oh, we're changing the gender of our main character, knowing that she was involved, everyone was like, oh, I think, you know, I can trust that the decisions made on this show are done with like the best intentions.
Well, I also think that was something for like Stephen Sondheim himself to be like, I'm signing on to this because I trust the hands that my show is in.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think it is one of the last major productions that he was able to be involved in. Of his shows. I was like, so I was listening to the West End cast recording, because there is no Broadway cast recording of this production. I don't think there will be. But the West End cast recording is of the same show, just different cast, except for Patti, obviously. And I was following along with the book of lyrics on Finishing the Hat. And I would say a fair amount of the lyrics are changed and tweaked, like little couplets here and there, different rhymes, different things. And I'm like, oh, he was always changing, always editing, always making better what he'd previously written. You know, some of it was updating and some of it was switching the gender and just making things a little more modern. But some stuff was just an update for, you know, a different word choice, or let's try something new. It seemed like it didn't need to be changed to fit this new adaptation. So I don't know, I was just like, you know, even in his like 90s, late 80s, 90s, he was still continuing to work and continuing to improve upon his own work. So
I remember there was a Matt Doyle interview. This was like early pandemic, of there being a conversation if they were going to change the lyric of hepatitis to like coronavirus in Not Getting Married. God. There was a conversation, and he was like, Stephen Sondheim was like trying to figure out lyrically if it would work. It's a
little bit longer.
Yeah, like syllables wise, like does this work? Does this sound correct? And the answer at the end of the day was absolutely not, because like hopefully, I mean, COVID's going to be around for the rest of our lives. We'll talk about it forever, but so is hepatitis. So it's still relevant.
But yeah, I love that he was so willing to be open to our interpretations of his own work. And now every revival of his work, we will not have his input. So now I feel like the lyrics are locked. Now I feel like you can't change them.
Yeah. And I also wonder if it will ever, I mean, like regionally, it will be done gender swapped back, but I wonder if a professional
both ways, I think.
Production, you'll think they'll just like keep the new lyrics, but whatever gender it is, whatever gender it is.
I'd be very curious, but I wonder if they'll have kind of options when the licensing, it's like, okay, these lyrics are, what you would typically use for a man, but if you're gender swapping it, this couplet can be changed, right. And this couplet can be changed, and you can adapt. Because I can see this show being done in so many ways going forward. You can have Bobby still be played by a man. You can have Bobby be played by a woman. You can switch Jamie, or you can have Amy. Or you can, I don't know, you can have one of the girlfriends be a boyfriend, or one of the boyfriends be a girlfriend. I think now that they've done this, it's so open for any future productions. It doesn't have to be the way it's always been done, or this new way. It can be some sort of combination of them both, and I think that's super exciting too.
So my question is, because I know that you love this show like so much, why is it not successful? Why are Sondheim properties like not successful at the end of the day?
This is the question, and I don't want to say like they're too smart, but I think they're high concept, like quite high brow.
Yeah.
And I think for your, let's say, general Broadway theater going audience, this is not if you're going into town for a weekend, this is not the show you're seeing. These are not the shows you're seeing for the most part. And even something like Into the Woods, which sounds so commercial, but then you hear, but Act 2 gets really weird, and then you're turned off, Or, I don't know, other Sondheim shows, Assassins. It's about the men who tried to assassinate U.S. presidents. And the audience members are like, okay, this is not Aladdin, This is not the feel-good theater that I'm looking to take my whole family to. It feels to me like destination theater. It doesn't feel like impulse theater, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think because Sondheim's lyrics are so... I just remember watching Six by Sondheim, the documentary, which I'd seen, and then we watched again to be on the original cast at the movies. Sondheim talking about how what he loved about writing lyrics was that he loved puzzles and trying to puzzle out the exact right word in each moment. And the lyrics are so amazingly crafted that it is a lot to take in, and you have to be listening and paying attention, versus, let's say, a Phantom of the Opera, where it's very visual. It's very, you don't necessarily need to listen to every single lyric to understand what's going on. And then, you can disprove me by saying, well, Hamilton is really lyrically dense.
It's different though.
Well,
it's different.
But it's different.
It doesn't feel the same. Because even times, when I was watching this, and I liked it a lot, but I did not love this show. And I think that it's probably because, there's a lot going on. And I had said to you, we had just driven in from that night. You, need to be... You
need to focus.
In the right frame of mind to watch a Sondheim show sometimes. And totally, Absolutely. that's not something as a selling point for me to say to someone that's, touring New York, to be like...
No, for sure.
You can't turn off your brain. You need to pay attention. That's not a selling point. And sometimes it should be. But, it's just interesting to think because, obviously, not like direct competitor, but like the main two, I would say, are like ALW and Sondheim. And they're so different from each other. And one has like super, super long running shows on Broadway, and the other has quote unquote flops. So
yeah, this company is kind of Stephen Sondheim's first success on his own, because any previous success like West Side Story or Gypsy, he only wrote the lyrics, he didn't write the music. And then his two previous musicals that were his solely, I believe, were, I'm not reading the book in order, I believe were Anyone Can Whistle and A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, and those were like very flops. But this got like pretty good reviews, and I think he felt really proud of it, like as his own, he wrote it, the music and the lyrics completely by himself, and yet it still was not super long running. And
no,
part of me, I wish, like, these are shows that I love, and like I wish that he had that success, but part of me is also kind of grateful, because that means we get to see a million versions of Company and a million versions of Into the Woods. And not that I want to, but there's only one version of Phantom of the Opera. You know what I mean? If you want to see Phantom, you're stuck seeing
not
that way.
true. There's a new staging, and the new staging is not good.
Okay, so
and also Love Never Dies exists.
Okay, well, whatever. But because these shows did not run forever, because they closed, they're open to licensing and open to being revived, and you get to see so many different directors and theater companies and actors' interpretations and takes, and it opens it up to a completely new interpretation like this one. Whereas, let's say something like Cats, you're only really ever going to see Cats one way.
And you'll feel the same way about it every time.
Yeah, it just kind of is the way it is. And I also, and because like Company, let's say, is about like regular human people, just like a normal person, it's so easy to like project yourself onto. Like, I don't think you can watch Company without bringing who you are.
I think it depends on the age and the person sitting in the audience. Sure. Like, I'm not sure my dad would sit there and be like, I relate.
Well, not necessarily to Bob. I'm not necessarily saying Bobby.
I think in general.
I watched it with my mom, and she was cackling at Jennifer Simard, who brings the house down in that first kind of like vignette. And also, we were talking about the show after, and she said, the song Sorry Grateful, she said, I thought that really like was true to what marriage is. I really like felt that. My parents have been married for 36 years, so are they experts? Well, they're experts on their own marriage, let's say. But she's like, I really thought that was like I really like felt that represented what marriage is really like. And I'm like, that's so funny. Stephen at that point had never been married, had never been in a long-term relationship. But he wrote this like show about marriage. So even if you're not necessarily relating to Bobby, which like, I don't know, as a woman in my late 20s, like how can you not relate to Bobby? Like for me, how can I not relate to Bobby?
Minus the like maybe alcoholism of Katrina Lang's version.
The bourbon. I think that's kind of an interesting thing, because she's very much reacting to everyone. So I almost feel like she's drinking for something to do, to not like say what's on her mind.
I was just, like, shocked. I had heard before I went that like this version of Bobby is like kind of an alcoholic, and then I was like, oh, she kind of is.
I really, I was.
They gotta get that Maker's Mark sponsorship.
Gotta get that. And then when the set gets really, really tiny, she crawls through the door and she drinks the tiny bottle of bourbon.
It still said Maker's Mark on it. I was obsessed with that. Yeah.
It was giving kind of like Alice in Wonderland, like drink me.
Yes.
Yeah, like, in the documentary, Katrina Lenk was saying Bobby as a woman really made sense to her, because as a woman, you're often taught to like be a bit of a people pleaser. Mm-hmm. And she said, because Bobby is like, she obviously clearly has opinions about what all her friends are saying or doing, but she doesn't really share them. And she kind of just responds and kind of like tries to, she's not being like overtly herself with her personality. She's just kind of fitting in with each couple. And you're like, what is Bobby's own true personality? You never know. And I took every time she was drinking was like her trying to get out of an awkward situation, or her friends doing something insane, and she's like, I can't say anything, so I just need to drink.
So literally the whole show, top to bottom.
And absolutely. And also, you're with your married friends, and they're going on about being married or telling you need to be married or blah blah blah, and you're just like, I cannot listen to this conversation one more time. I cannot.
No, it's true.
To get through this conversation my friends have had a million times with me, I need to drink more bourbon.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know, it was interesting. Yes, she drank a lot of bourbon in the show. Her big bottle of bourbon, her tiny bottle of bourbon. I was obsessed with the tiny desk when there was a little tiny red tote bag under it.
Yeah. I know.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about performances in this show? Like, do we want to go there first?
Yeah.
Okay, so there are,
Who do you want to start with?
Well, I already briefly touched on her, but, like, Jen Simard, that first vignette with...
yeah, let's, like, kind of go in order, I guess. We'll leave Bobby to the end, because I think that's a different conversation. But let's go in order of, like, vignette of couples.
So the structure of the show, the way it works, is we open at Bobby's birthday party, and then you kind of go into her, like, the last time she hung out with each of these couple friends. So that first vignette... So it's based on 11 short plays written by George Furth, who was an actor. And the way that the PBS documentary explained it is that they were all kind of not really interconnected at all. They were all about a couple and about a third person with that couple and interacting with that couple. And George Furth sent them to Stephen Sondheim, and Stephen Sondheim sent them to Hal Prince, and Hal Prince is like, I think we have a musical here, which is insane to think about, because
no, there's no musical there.
This is the first real concept musical. There was nothing like this before. And so what they thought was, oh, what if the third person in all of these plays, these short plays, was the same person?
Yeah.
And the musical's actually not about the couples, but it's about that person who's observing, who's on the outside. So anyway, so we open up at Bobby's birthday party. It's her 35th birthday party. And the first vignette is a crowd pleaser. It's Harry and Sarah, and, you know, Harry's
Tony Award nominee Jen
Simard. And our favorite receiver.
Yeah.
Lord Farquaad himself. I was telling my mom he played Lord Farquaad, and my mom's like, I was like, on his knees, and she's like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So they, you know, Sarah is on a diet and is working out, and Harry is not drinking, but they're both lying about this, and then they, like, start doing jujitsu. This scene is comedically, I think, the high point of the show.
But it's also wild what's happening.
It's wild.
On stage.
It's so funny. Because then they're, like, doing jujitsu, and then they freeze in tableau in these, like, random headlocks, and Patti LuPone comes out and starts singing a little ditty.
This also, to me, not even, like, actors-wise, and I feel like we'll talk about this all the way through of each of the, like, couplets, but this is where the set moves on for the first time, which is this, like, big neon box almost, and it kind of lights up in the center, but there's two other sets on the side
of
of
the
just,
hallway,
like,
or the bathroom
rooms.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Genius. And the way that, like, the lights come on and then they shut off and they come on and then they, like, blink weird when Bobby's having a moment. Like, I literally think if the set wasn't the set, I would have hated this show. Like, literally would have hated this show. The set was such a character to me and, like, so important to the storytelling that without it, I don't, like, I couldn't imagine it without it. This version specifically.
It was a huge part of telling the story, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, the way it moved all the time, for sure.
So that was the first time we noticed it, was, like, that.
That big one came forward. So I was discussing, I think there's only one big box that they kept redressing.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Is it different big boxes, or is it one big box they just changed out, like, the fridge or the couch or the whatever?
Yeah.
Because the doors were always in the same place. And I just don't think they have the room to put, like, 3 big boxes back there.
No.
I was like, where do they put this set? Because this thing's not that big.
No, I know.
Put it? It's huge.
Yeah.
I was like, where do they put the giant company letters from
I know.
another 100 people?
They're, like, split up, so it's fine. They can, like,
yeah,
move
they can, like, kind of stack
everywhere.
them.
Yeah.
I was like, and also my other thing was, a lot of times when you don't have a lot of room backstage, you lift the set, you hang it really high, but the band is kind of there.
The band reveal.
The band
reveal.
The opening number. Great. You're just like, the band! I love when you can see the band.
Yeah.
Which was actually a great, well, Into the Woods and Company, you could both see the band this weekend.
Yeah.
So it was a good time.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Yeah, so in that apartment, and then Patty comes out and is singing the little things you do together. And I think that was also another really clever thing, and this is the structure of the show, but that you're watching scenes of a marriage, and then you're also watching people comment on it, you know? And like, something like even later, kind of in the pre-Barcelona, where Bobby's with Andy in bed, and then the other couples are singing, you know, Poor Baby about Bobby, and the contrast of that with him, I thought really, really clever.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so who's our next couple?
Our next couple.
Is it Greg Hildreth? Because I really...
It might be Greg.
To me, this couple, we don't need them. I'm over it. They did have an amazing entrance through the trap door.
The trap door was really cool.
The apartment coming up from the trap door is, again, genius. But what they were doing, bye.
I think, you know, each of these, because they're based on these, like, short plays, these short vignettes, obviously some are more main character energy and some are more supporting character energy.
This isn't either of those things. This is, like, guest starring in a sitcom show. I don't need it.
And Peter and Susan were not main character energy.
They're not side character energy either.
They were funny because they're kind of the only, like, couple that, like, separates, you know? Their like, marriage didn't work.
Barely.
And then they worked better when they were divorced.
Yeah.
And I think there's obviously the gag of her being like, I'm pregnant, you know, at the end, which is kind of funny. This is also a moment, and I also think they switched their lines. Mm-hmm. I think Peter and Susan's lines are switched from the original play. And the other thing is there is, like, a cut moment where typically Peter kind of comes on to male Bobby. He says, you know, have you ever thought about, you know, being with a man? And Bobby's like, Bobby doesn't really know how to react.
Yeah.
And so that's cut for this version.
Which leaves them with less to do.
Which leaves them with a lot less to do. That version, that moment always worked best to me in the Neil Patrick Harris 2011 version when Craig Bierko says it for some reason. I always found it really funny in that moment. But at the same time, you know, if we're talking in a modern moment, it's not so unbelievable to think that, you know, Bobby had explored, you know, Bobby lives in New York, she's a modern woman, that it's not so unbelievable to think that she'd, you know, be open to or explored being, like, with another woman. So it just doesn't have, like, quite the shock factor that it did in 1970, let's say.
Yeah, I'm fine with that being taken out, but I also would have been fine with with them not being in the show at all.
I understand what you're saying. However, I think the thing is, it is a 50-year-old musical. And when you do revivals, like, they're in conversation with the previous versions of them. And so, and they obviously changed a lot of things, but I just don't think you can, like, fully cut a couple. You just can't. Even though they were kind of, like, the least used.
They added nothing to the show for me. Like, zero. Added nothing. I was like, except for that set moment. That was it. And then I, like, just didn't care. This has nothing to do with, like, them as people or their performances, because I don't think that they were given anything to do. Like, I really don't. I feel, like, very strongly about that these two characters did not need to be here.
They're just...
I understand everything you're saying in theory. I understand, like, not being able to cut characters from, like, a revival of a musical, but I say let's change that rule.
I mean, you could, but I think it would be weird.
Would it? Would
Some
you have
people might not
them?
notice. Some people might not have noticed. But, I mean, the way that
I know you would have noticed, but would you have missed them?
I mean, I truly don't know.
The answer is no.
Because the way this show works, like, these scenes kind of have the only through line is Bobby. Like, they don't really know each other. So I think you can kind of, you know, pull out a few couples and only do a few.
Yeah.
Like, without really disrupting the whole story.
Yeah, because they never, like, interact with the other friends.
It does seem that these couples do not know each other.
Right, yeah.
It seems that they are not, like, all they have in common is Bobby. Like, they're not friends outside of Bobby.
But even that, they all know Bobby. Like, the only time that they would see each other is at, like, a Bobby event.
At Bobby's birthday party.
Yeah, and that's it. Like, once a year.
Yeah, they don't know each other. So there's no real interactions between them besides these kind of, like, offside monologues or comments to the audience where they're, like, dancing together or, like, you know,
right,
whatever.
Okay, who's next?
It's Jenny and David who smoke weed on the on the stoop.
So you saw Real Life Married Couple.
I did see Real Life Married Couple. So Jenny and David. So normally David is played by Christopher Fitzgerald, who was out for about 3 weeks, which meant I saw Jeff Creedy, who is married to Nikki Renee Daniels, so they were really married during this couple. And it was actually really sweet. And this is another one of the storylines where they flopped the man and the woman's lines. Mm-hmm. So typically in the original production, David is the one who's with Bobby and more open to smoking weed, and what's her name? Jenny is the one who is
more like reserved,
and is just like doing it for a fun time. And then this time it's switched. And I actually thought Jeff Creedy was really, really funny in this role. He was like very uptight. I think I would like him better than what Christopher Fitzgerald was doing. But I thought he was really good at playing this kind of like uptight, square New Yorker who was smoking weed and was like having a fun time. This is like a really sweet scene. And it was like, the intimacies of marriage, like she was saying, he's only really doing this for me. He's like pretending to be happy, and you kind of don't even know, like, is he just pretending to be happy, or does she think she knows him better than she actually does? Like, you don't know, but like I don't know. I thought this was like a lovely scene. And then it jumps into the song, You Could Drive a Person Crazy, which is the three kind of boyfriends who, again, are typically girlfriends, but in this production are boyfriends. Mm-hmm. So, April in the original production, the flight attendant becomes Andy, the flight attendant in this production. Kathy, kind of like your girl next door, the one that got away, becomes Theo in this production. And your Marta in the original production, who was like a quintessential New Yorker, becomes PJ in this production. And I don't know, these boyfriends.
I mean, to backtrack for a second, so I saw Chris Fitzgerald in this production, and he was giving his best Ogie from Waitress. So right. I, after seeing it, was like, not for you, Stev.
No.
Just based on your opinions of Ogie. Yeah. So, Ogie. I'm sure a different take is like obviously a different take.
I really liked him. I really like Jeff Creedy in this part. I really like Jeff Creedy.
But to talk about the boyfriends, again, in my opinion, we only need one. So, because Theo does nothing in this show. He seems like very underdeveloped and has one moment with Bobby. And I was like, I don't even understand how you're like having this moment with her. We don't even know anything about you.
But like, okay, so multiple things. In that original production, Kathy was played by Donna McKechnie, who was obviously the original.
And you said like TikTok is
a huge dance number for her, kind of in like Bobby's mind. But even though they really only have that one scene in the park where he tells her, there's a time to come to New York, a time to leave it, and that he's getting married, this is like, to me, this is like a really poignant scene, because like I think Bobby sees her or his like one opportunity like get away from them, and also Bobby feels like they're kind of similar in that they were maybe avoiding marriage or avoiding this, and then hearing from them that they're no longer doing that they're going to get married, that they're going to like make a different decision, like makes Bobby in that moment I think feel quite like left behind. And the way Katrina played that was like really heartbreaking to me.
I just think that, and because we know that this is like a no plot musical, it's very hard when there's so many characters in a show to like be invested in everyone that's there. And
well, the thing is, I'm invested in Bobby, right? And so I'm just invested in everyone's relationship with Bobby. I'm not necessarily thinking like, gotta see Theo again. No, I'm thinking, like, what does this mean to Bobby?
I need more of a backstory, because like to me, like I was like, why are you even here? I don't need to see you at all. Like I can hear about her being in a relationship like with this character, but like I don't need those moments. I don't think we need to see every single person in this relationship.
But this
I think
is the show. But no, like no, I understand what you're saying. But like this is the show.
And I think there are flaws with the show.
But this is the show, like seeing like snapshots of like if the structure. But
some people feel
Bobby
so much
on her
more
35th birthday
developed than other people. That's the issue. So if you're gonna give me this like amazing relationship with Bobby and Jamie, I need something more than like, I'm getting married, we dated for like however long. Like, do you know what I mean?
Well, no, because the structure is Bobby life flashes and decisions flash before her eyes on her 35th birthday. Mm-hmm. Some things are going to have a long impact and some are just going to be short moments. You know, it's not like, it's not written for equal screen time for everyone. It's trying to convey the emotional journey that Bobby is on. And so for some people, for Bobby's emotional journey, you only need a little bit. And for some people, you need a lot more, you know? And for like, Jamie is her best friend. Yeah. And like, that was like a huge, like that had a huge, Jamie not wanting to get married and getting married had a huge impact on Bobby's decision making. But, you know, like, let's say like Greg Hildreth and, spouse whose name I can't remember, like that did not have as much impact on Bobby's decision. Right. So if you think of it all as like in Bobby's mind, mm-hmm. then I think it makes so much more sense than trying to think of it as like a cohesive narrative.
Well, it's not a cohesive narrative, first of all.
And it's not meant to be.
And that's fine. But then like explain to me why Another 100 People is sung by this character, PJ, and then we like have a scene with him later. Why does he sing that song? Like, what's the reason for it?
This is actually interesting. This is the only song that's not about relationships in the show. It's about New York City.
And spoiler alert, I hated this version of this song.
This is interesting because
I loved everything that happened around it, but the way that it became like such an angry song, I was like, I'm over this.
This is like a great song. This was like the weirdest staging moment for me. I didn't quite get what they were going for with the staging of this.
With the company like letters.
With the big company letters and them just kind of like moving them around.
It also felt, and I don't know if it felt this way to you, but it felt so long to me, that song.
It did not, because
like
again,
I watched them do
like,
this
fairly well.
But like I watched them walk in and out of the O 12 times. Like that's how it felt.
O was like the park. The O was the park that they kept going back to. Yeah. But because I know that song, you know, you sing a verse and a chorus of the song, and then you have a scene. You sing a verse and a chorus of the song with one boyfriend, and you have a sing a verse of the chorus, and you have a scene with another boyfriend. You sing a verse and a chorus of the song, and then you end with like PJ. Mm-hmm. So it gets much more extended than it is on the cast recording, where you're not like having these like scene moments.
Scenes in between.
Yeah, like this song is kind of like the most disparate song from all the other songs, and I think it gets forgiven because it's like a really great song. But I think the staging of it needed to not be what it was. I didn't
like the reorchestrations of this one either.
They did not stand out to me, the reorchestrations.
It was just so like angry. It was so angry. I also saw Heath Saunders do it. I know you saw Bobby Conte.
Sure, I saw Bobby Conte.
I think we went out of order there slightly.
That's fine. Fine. We were kind of at...
Well, the boyfriends is where we ended up.
To
finish the boyfriends, Barcelona, like...
You get a big Andy moment.
And Andy is the most, like he's the best of the three to me. Also, Claiborne Eldridge giving like an amazing performance.
He's so funny in this. I think...
Remember when there was like talks that he would be nominated? And like I can see why.
Well, like Richard Fleishman was nominated in the West End for that role. Yeah. Which he does. He has like a lot of meat to bite off, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny because, you know, everyone's always like, you should get married. Why haven't you started dating anyone? And then you're dating people and you're like, this is what's available to me. This idiot. You know, this is why I'm not married. Everyone's
hot,
an idiot.
Though.
Hot. You're right. Absolutely hot. Absolutely attractive. Those abs. He was walking around in that towel during TikTok. I was like, hot. But that's not enough. You know, everyone's like, you should just date. And I'm like, do you see who's available?
Yeah.
Idiots only.
You know what? At least he has a well-paying job of a flight attendant.
He's a flight attendant. You know, he has a career.
He
can afford to live in New York. I'm happy for him. But
yeah.
I couldn't marry this man.
No.
I could not marry with this man. And I don't think Bobby could marry this man.
No.
But Bobby's like passing the time with this man, you know?
Yeah. Because he's hot.
Because he's hot. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. And then obviously that moves into, Barcelona's in Act 2, but Barcelona moves into the TikTok sequence, and she kind of like sees her life. Okay, so now Andy's here. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what if I marry him? What if I have a baby with him? And like kind of sees her entire life flash before her eyes and thinks, okay, what if I married Theo? What if I married PJ? And like seeing her life and seeing these men go on with their lives and her being stuck at home and like trapped. And...
See, like this was such an effective scene to me, and I think like this is sort of what I'm trying to say of like chopping and trimming, because like this was so effective and there was no dialogue needed to meet any of these other characters.
But the boyfriends that they show, like, it was not the husbands. It was Andy, it was Theo, and it was PJ.
That's
as
fine.
Like the husbands in the scene, and you have to like know who they are.
I don't think you do. I actually don't think you need to know who they are. I think it could be just like guys that she's been with. That's it.
But how do you know that they're guys that she's been with unless they're just like random people?
Because the whole show is about who she's been with.
But she hasn't been with like the husbands.
But like if I'm having a conversation with you, like you don't need to hear these people speak. Like, you know what I mean? Like I can tell you these things without having to hear them speak.
Show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. You want too much exposition. I want to see it. No. I want to see the devastation on her face when she finds out Theo's getting married. Not that because was, like, she's in love with Theo.
That's fine, but it was just like unbelievable to me that she was devastated by that. That's what I mean. Yeah.
I like really disagree. I really felt that moment.
I think like our takes of like Katrina like were very different. Like it was just like unrealistic to me that she would be upset about that because we literally know nothing about this man. I know this is like,
but again, we know Bobby.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me. That's why I think like
I know Bobby.
A scene like TikTok was so effective to me because I was like, I understand what's happening here. I don't need to hear the conversation. I'm happy to hear it from Andy, and that's it.
And it was, like, I think George Firth, who wrote the book, he had such a fun time writing Andy because...
Oh my god, I'm sure. Or, well, like, at the time it was not Andy, right?
Or April.
Yeah.
April. Because there's so much given to this character in terms of scene work because they're just so funny.
The moment was the, like, I love your jumpsuit. That was the moment.
I also love the jumpsuit. And then when she took it off and she had like a red bra and underwear, I'm like, yes, red.
Yeah. But he had like really good one-liners in that scene.
He's just so funny.
Yeah. Okay, now moving on to a couple that I actually care about. Jamie and Paul.
So this is kind of the showstopper of the show. It's right before the Act 1 finale and it's Getting Married Today. And our characters are Jamie and Paul, and they're about to get married. They're about to get gay married. And Jamie is having cold feet. He's having the coldest of feet. Mm-hmm. And this is a show-stopping patter song, the fastest rap on Broadway until Hamilton. And Matt Doyle, who I saw, absolutely nailed it, received a standing ovation the night I was there. People were, like, hyped. People were hyped.
Everyone was hyped when I saw it, too. And my brothers, both leaving company, were like, Matt Doyle was the best part of this show. Which, like... That song should be the best part of the show if you're...
It's great.
Yeah. And also, like, everything happening in that scene is wild.
The stating... Nikki Renee Daniels is, like, the third member of that song as the, like,
priest?
Efficient...
yeah. I don't know what she's doing.
Preacher, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, coming out of every... There's also, I feel like, a trap door.
There is.
Like, the door closes. Like, so the side... The door on the left... She's behind it. It closes.
Slams.
Yeah,
and she walks out.
She's gone.
Yeah,
and she's gone.
She
like,
must. There must be not a door with a handle, but like a push door that like that door closes. She pushes out and walks away.
Yeah.
Actually, funny because when I saw it,
I
saw it from the mezzanine, and in the Jen Simard Chris Sieber scene when she eats the brownie, I saw her spit it out into like a stagehand's hand. So,
really?
They're not always hidden. Yeah. So, like,
that girl ate it.
They're, like, props behind the doors type thing. So, I think same thing of, like, when that happens, someone's, like, waiting for Nikki on the other side to, like, usher her back to where she needs to be. Because then she, like, comes out of the fridge. Yeah.
The fridge is the funniest part for me, when she comes out of the fridge, and then he's, like, opening the fridge. Like, where is she? Even at the end, I think it's Bobby Conte who came out of the washing machine.
Oh, I don't remember.
I was like, I can't believe he just came out of the washing machine.
But, like, song aside, which is obviously, like, such a show-stopping song, to me, this is the, like, most realistic and, I would say, like, successful show of a relationship in, like, today's modern world. Like, the conversation between Jamie and Paul, or maybe it's between Jamie and Bobby, or maybe it's between all three, I don't remember. Mm-hmm. But, like, when It's Jamie and Bobby when they're talking about marriage and how he's like, I love him, but like, why do we need to put a label on that? Like, why do I have to be his husband to show him how much I love him? And I think that's a very real conversation with a lot of like, again, unfortunately, like with everything that's happening in the States, there's like a lot of worry about potential overturns of gay marriage. And I had listened to a Matt Doyle interview and he was like, you know, I've been with my partner for however many years, but like, I love him so much, but maybe we don't want to put a label on it. Like, why do we need to label it? And I was like, this is relatable in any context. It doesn't have to be gay marriage. It can be a heterosexual relationship. Like, it's always relatable.
And I saw in the PBS documentary, they were talking, Matt and Itai were talking about, you know, marriage being traditionally for so many years, this thing that only straight couples would do was for so long legally only for a man and a woman. And they fought, like gay people, the LGBTQ community fought so hard for the right. But then it's also like, why do we need to participate in this like heteronormative ritual?
Yeah.
Why are we doing that? Why do we need to, you know, do this traditionally like straight thing to
because we can
love.
like
and it's like just because we can doesn't mean we should. That's like an added line for this production, which is like honestly devastating when he says that to Paul. And then the line that like really got me from the scene was Jamie says to Bobby, after Bobby proposes marriage to Jamie, which I think works so much better when Bobby is a woman proposing to a gay man than Bobby is a man proposing to his best friend Amy, who's a woman.
Yeah.
Because I do think this is kind of like in the original with Bobby as a man, I do think he like there's like a lot of implications that like, was he in love with Amy? Does he wish he could
like
be married
throughout?
Amy? Or like, does he want someone exactly like Amy? Like that's kind of how I've read it a little bit.
I also think that's also just like a conversation in like our everyday lives of like, men can't be friends with women, they have to be in love with them type thing. So that kind of like checks that box.
And I don't believe that men and women can't be friends, but either. Like I kind of read, especially watching that Roll Esparza version over and over again, I don't know, I always read that like
he was kind of
Bobby
interested.
Kind of like longed for Amy, but like would never do anything about it, either out of like fear or just anything.
Whereas
but obviously this is that context is completely taken out because Jamie is gay and they're best friends, and I think like, you know, this relationship like truly like makes sense. You understand completely why they're best friends, and it almost feels like an act of desperation from Bobby proposing to Jamie, and also feels like a very safe thing because she wouldn't have to be like vulnerable in that marriage. There was like no risk of them falling in love. No, it would just be for like safety. And what Jamie says to her is like, I'm afraid to get married and you're afraid not to. And I was like, ugh, this like gut punch, because like as a woman in society, are you afraid not to participate in something that you've been brainwashed or like told you should want or told you should aspire to from birth? Like she's afraid not to, like that her life would be missing something if she's not doing this thing that everyone is like telling her that she needs to be doing. And that's like the turning point where Jamie decides he is going to marry Paul, and like that's like absolutely devastating to me. And then you kind of go into Marry Me a Little,
which I would like to say is Katrina's best moment in this show.
It's vocally a wonderful acting moment. I love how both in Marry Me a Little and in Being Alive, the stage empties out. It's just like black. And she's like alone on this stage, and it's like very like vulnerable. Like she's not surrounded by anything. It's just her singing like just her own thoughts. It was very emotional to me. Yeah, let me talk about Katrina actually.
Wait, do you want to talk about Patty first and then Katrina?
Okay, let's quickly talk about Patty. The characters of Joanne and Larry. Honestly, I thought Patty was very subtle. I thought
really?
Patty was giving a subtle performance.
Tyler hates Patty. After this, he doesn't know her, never knew her before, but walking out was like, I hate her.
her ladies who lunch, like, okay, I thought she was so funny throughout the show. I was obsessed that Patty was doing ensemble choreography in Side by Side. She's like moving tables and chairs just like everyone else. She's wearing the birthday hat. She's doing it all.
There was a Matt Doyle interview one time and he was like, you know, guys, Patty is like just like us. It's fine.
I was earlier today, I was just like watching a bunch of old interviews, and it was at the Olivier's. It was Patty, Richard Fleischman, and Jonathan Bailey. And Jonathan Bailey's like, Patty's lifting chairs. Just like, she's like doing.
Just like us peasants in the background.
Exactly. Yeah. She's like, we're all doing the same thing. I thought Patty was so funny when she comes out in TikTok in the like Katrina wig. Yeah. The Bobby wig. I was like, you're amazing. Mm-hmm. And then she does Ladies Who Lunch, which is the big Joanne moment.
Okay, but remember when remember when I texted you after seeing Company? I was like, "Do you know what happens in the background of Ladies Who Lunch?" You're like,
I was watching
I have no
it the
idea.
whole time.
Because once you see it, you can't unsee it.
The background, honestly, like was so. Maybe it was just the angle, but I couldn't quite see what was happening behind Patty during Ladies Who Lunch that much. Like, I knew they were all there, but there wasn't a lot of, like, movement behind her from where I could see.
Oh my god, all I could see was every single person's costume, every single person's
Christopher
dance
Sieber
move.
is in these, like, super high heels.
Yeah, but, like, I saw every single person's move from above. I was watching Matt the whole time, who's just, like, swaying in the background.
And they're not doing like much, but it's like subtle.
No, like him and Heath did like a whole choreography moment, and then like Chris Sieber, and then Jen Smart comes out and like puts down her sunglasses. There's so much happening behind that when you sit above, you see everything.
See, from where my angle, I was in like rush seats off to a little off to the side. You couldn't quite like you knew that they were back there, and you could see them moving a little bit, but you couldn't quite like see exactly what everyone was doing.
Every single movement I could see.
Oh. I'm sure. And then
it was so distracting though. It was so distracting.
Sure. I love when that scene opens and like the box comes forward. It's like company.
Yeah.
Like
the club scene. Yeah.
I would actually like to request that at the clubs. I would like that to be played at the clubs.
Well, that like disco Sondheim album.
Company. Yeah. Just you know what? I'm gonna start a club, and it's gonna be
just that.
And it's gonna be club musicals.
Yeah.
Okay. Honestly, I thought Patty gave a really subtle performance.
Did she not hold the last rise for like a long time?
No, she did. I've seen many people sing Ladies Who Lunch, including Patty.
Yeah.
And I thought this was restrained. I thought this was lovely. I thought it was restrained.
That's so funny.
Patty also got a standing ovation for Ladies Who Lunch. I thought it was restrained. It was a wonderful performance.
You're like, why am I standing right now? You didn't do anything.
Not that she didn't do anything, but I thought it was like, it was acted. You know, it wasn't like bombastic moment. It felt
bombastic when I saw it.
That's so funny. I was like, my mom's like, was Patty everything you wanted? And I was like, Patty was Patty. Patty did what Patty funny. Does. I thought she was restrained. I thought it was subtle.
And then his name is Larry, right? Is that the character's name?
Played by Terrence Archie, but yes, Larry.
This man does nothing in the show too.
He's Patty's husband. He's Patty's third husband.
That's
fourth husband, whichever.
That's all he does.
He seems nice. He seems like a nice man.
He holds her fur coat.
He holds the fur coat, and when he says to Bobby, you know, she's not like this when you're not around, like that maybe these married couples feel like they need to be putting on like an air to keep up with their single person. Yeah. Which actually, another note I made a lot of notes for this episode. The title of Company, and I like really thought about it this time, and I think I came to, and this is probably wrong, but what I came to why the show is called Company. There's like two meanings to Company of the title. Mm-hmm. And in that opening song, it's like phone rings, door chimes, in comes company. And it's like people who are visiting who then leave.
Yeah.
And you put on almost a performance for your guests. And they are not like, it's not intimate. It's, you know, company comes over, you put on your cleanest house, you serve your best food, and then they leave. But then in Marry Me a Little, she says, want me first and foremost, keep me company. And I was like, that's like a very intimate way. That's like, you're not putting on airs. You're not putting on a performance for someone. Yeah. That's someone who just sits next to you silently. And I was like, company are her friends, but she's missing, let's say, the company of
like
one
that's
person who puts her first.
You don't want to like be alone by yourself. Like you want just like the comfort of someone beside you. Just someone
to keep her company. You don't have to talk to like not even talking to each other, just being just keeping her company while she like goes through life. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily like a scheduled thing, but just someone who keeps her company through her day-to-day life. And so that's the title. Like that's why I thought the title of Company came from. That's my interpretation of it.
Right.
How did I get here?
I have no idea. But to round out performances, let's talk about Katrina.
Katrina. There have been mixed reviews on Katrina and her ability to sing this score.
More than mixed. I would say probably like 90% negative reviews.
And I will give my review. Katrina was amazing. Katrina was my favorite performance in the entire show. I loved her. She sounded perfect on everything. She sounded so good. She sounded so good.
So you think she was robbed
so
of the
good.
Tony nomination?
I don't know if she was robbed. I think Bobby's a tough role because, like, she's reacting, right? Everyone is doing everything around her. And like I said, like, Bobby's listening. Bobby's, instead of saying something, she's drinking her bourbon. She is not the star of these scenes. She is the cipher that all these other characters are shown through. So sometimes I think it's hard to know, okay, what are you doing? You're just watching these other performances go on.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes it's hard to understand, but I thought she was perfect in this role. And she sounded amazing the entire time. Like, so good. Her being alive was perfect, I thought.
That's so interesting. See,
It's
like,
great.
I also had no issues with Katrina. I thought the reviews were way too harsh. Like, she is giving a great performance.
I've also heard people said she's gotten better since then. So seeing it 8 days before they close, maybe I was seeing peak Katrina. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think they also, like, worked pretty hard with her during the pandemic and the closure to, like, make sure that it was, because she got a lot of harsh reviews pre-COVID, which was only, like, 7 performances. So post-COVID is when people were like, she really came into her own in this character. I agree. Like, I thought she acted it very well. I think her Marry Me a Little is the standout for me as opposed to her being alive. I don't know why. I think, like, maybe she was... Sometimes I guess it depends because this is, like, kind of an emotional roller coaster show. And if she is too emotional by the end of being alive, it can, unfortunately, like, hurt you vocally because you're crying. So it's hard to sound like how I expect you to sound. So I think her Marry Me a Little was, like, a little bit more successful to me than her being alive. But that being said, like, I had no issues with her either. I don't think the criticism needs to be there. And I also, like, can't really picture anyone else, like, doing that. Like, I have no issues with her.
It is quite interesting because I think the casting on the West End, Rosalie Craig, she's giving very much Girl Next Door, whereas that is not the energy Katrina gives.
No,
Katrina's giving a little more rebellious, a little more independent. But even as a person,
like, we don't know Rosalie Craig, like, outside of this.
I don't know either of them.
But, like, as a person, when Katrina shows up at events, you're like, what's that outfit? I love it.
It's the eyes.
Yeah.
It's just the attitude.
She's got, like, a red bob right now. Like, she is, like, just a different kind of person than... She's not a Girl Next Door. I would never describe Katrina Link as a Girl Next Door.
Like, Rosalie Craig, who on the West End, who's on that West End cast recording, it gives a much more, like, sweeter energy. And I really like Katrina's kind of... It gives much more... Rosalie Craig's interpretation, this is, like, based on stereotypes. I'm like, this might be a woman who is, like, sad about, or who's, like, missing getting married, or, like, wanted it more, let's say, than Katrina's Bobby, who never got married just because, like, she never got around to it, or she was more independent, and was, like, really prioritizing other things. And this is just, like, based on how they look and just the way that their voice sits in these songs. But I really love Katrina's interpretation of Bobby. And at that point, we get to Being Alive, which is one of my favorite musical theater songs ever. Even just, like, lyrically, the journey just in that song alone, you know, at the beginning, it's like someone to hold you too close. She's describing what marriage would be like and all the annoying things of it. And then by the end of the song, she's, like, asking, like, somebody hold me too close, somebody hurt me. She's, like, open. She's, like, finally opened herself up to being vulnerable in that moment.
Which I also think is a very different take when a woman sings it than a man. It just, like, hits different. And again, like, we can say that because we're women, but, like, and I'm sure a man can relate to that in a different way, but watching a woman, like, pour her heart out and sing those kind of lyrics, it just, like, feels more, like, vulnerable than if a man were to sing it.
Yeah, like, I mean, as a woman going through society, to open yourself up is a very, I mean, for any human being, it's a scary thing to open yourself up to being vulnerable. But I think for a woman, there's just, like, a lot of, like, more, like, let's say, risks that come with that.
Sure, yeah.
And so it's, like, easier to, like, hold yourself, like, apart or, like, put your walls up. And I feel like that's what Bobby has. Bobby has her walls up. And at the end, I'm not even like, oh, now Bobby is looking for a husband. I'm like, oh, now Bobby is like a willing to be vulnerable in society. Like, she's not necessarily like, oh, I need to get married tomorrow. She's like, I will be myself. I am open to the possibility. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
So obviously this, before seeing it, was one of my favorite shows. And going to New York, you know, once it announced it was closing, I was like, I have to go. I have to see it ideally with this cast. And something that I love about it is that it is a 50-year-old show, and that you can see it in so many different ways and so many different people's interpretations. And watching that PBS documentary, I can't remember who said it, but they said the text gives the blueprint, but every builder will build the house in a different way. So that text and those songs are always there, but every person or every director or actor is going to look at that blueprint and create something completely different out of it.
Right.
And it can be interpreted in so many different ways and still be true to that source material. And I also love, you know, this show premiered on Broadway in 1970, and yet it still felt so fresh. It's still, because it's about humanity, you know, that's will always be true. 50 years from now, it'll still probably feel fresh, because it's just about human beings, like, interacting with other people. And it's also, I think, so successful in that it's not successful, but also successful because I think it's impossible not to bring your own experiences to, because there's so many different characters, there's always a character for you to relate to, whether it's like me being like a young woman who's like not married, like single, relating to Bobby, or let's say my mom, like relating to like Jennifer Samard's character, or, you know, thinking, wow, Sorry Grateful, that really like feels true to how I think about marriage as well. Yeah. Or just any one of these relationship dynamics. I think, you know, because it speaks to like the human experience and humanity, it will always be relevant.
Right. Did you have like zero issues with this entire production?
The staging of Another 100 People, I think.
Other than that, that's very minor.
I really didn't, because this show I know and I love, and so they were just doing the show, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I felt it was so successful. I don't have issues with the like characterization of anyone or anything, or the performances really. Oh, there's another thing actually. I thought the ensemble was so random because they were so underused. They don't show up until Another 100 People in Act 1.
Right, when they're like wearing the subway outfits, right?
Yeah, they might be doing stuff, moving stuff backstage, but you don't see them until Another 100 People, and they only show up in 3 or 4 songs.
They're there in the club scene for ladies who
they're absolutely there in the club scene. They're absolutely there in the club scene. And they're used in TikTok a little bit.
No, I agree with you. It's a weird...
I don't think they were necessary. I don't think you needed them. I think cut them. Cut the ensemble. Cut that budget. Fire those people.
No, we don't fire those people. Fire people. Well, but aren't they all the swings anyway?
Yeah, they're the swings anyway.
So
but
they're
then,
always
like,
there.
Do you need another swing to then swing on to cover them when they go on? I don't know.
That's a great question.
Yeah, I just felt it was kind of odd. I was like, you're really underused. I don't think this like ensemble is necessary. I think they could do the 14-person cast, the 5 couples, Bobby and the 3 boyfriends, and call it a day. I don't think they needed that ensemble. Maybe they were just moving set pieces a lot. Like, sure. But I think you can do other things with that.
Right.
One actual last thing. So sometimes when Patty was out, Jennifer Samard would go on as Joanne. And after seeing the show, I would have been so depressed to see Jennifer Samard as Joanne. Not because...
Oh, because you wouldn't have
She wouldn't have been great. Because then I would have missed her...
As Sarah, yeah.
I would have missed her as Sarah. And that would have been absolutely devastating. Because she's so funny. She's so funny. I'm sure other people are funny in that, but I would have been devastated to miss her as Sarah.
So in a perfect world, you like to see it twice and see both versions.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. She's so funny.
So
are you rating it?
Yeah. I'm scared for your reaction to my rating.
That's fine. Everyone can... This is the other thing. Like, we rate, but like everyone can have their own opinions on things, you know? Everyone can have their own thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay. My rating is 5 out of 5 silver 35 balloons.
Wow.
We didn't even talk about the balloons, but I love the balloons.
The balloons are iconic.
The giant one?
Yeah.
The tiny ones?
Yeah, they're great. It's been a big part of the like marketing campaign since day one. Yeah.
Yeah.
My rating of Company, again, I liked it. didn't love it as much. This is like, wow, gonna like hide when I say this. My rating of Company is 3.5 out of 5 Maker's Mark bourbons.
The tiny one. Only the tiny one.
Only the tiny one.
The tiny one.
I just like, I also think, and this is like not a good thing or a bad thing, but you have such a heavy emotional like connection to this show that no matter what, you were gonna love it. Doesn't matter.
It's possible.
Unless it was like actually horrible, which it's not.
There is a possibility that like my mom was like, after I watched it, she was like, what did you think? And I was like, oh, I love it. And she's like, oh, good. You know, because like, yeah, like it was announced, it opened on the West End in 2018. Yeah. So it was so long ago to be like thinking about this show. Yeah. So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I do think like there was a chance you would, but like with this cast, there's no way that you could have.
No, and I also knew quite a bit about it going in. Like I hadn't seen it, but I knew what the visuals were like. I knew the cast. Like it wasn't like nothing was like a complete shock to me on stage, except for Claiborne Elder disappearing from the bed. I was like, where'd you go?
Wow, we didn't even talk about the most iconic, which like doesn't happen every night, so it's irrelevant. But like. Claiborne Elder was once thrown up on inside of the box in the opening number of Company, and I will never unsee that.
I actually did not think of it. I was in it. I was having the time of my life. But I think about it now. I was after the show. I was like,
it was the only thing I could think about when I was watching the opening number. As soon as he opened the door to enter,
got thrown up on. Yeah, because he doesn't enter the box until the end of the number, right?
No, so he's outside the box. When he came in and he was outside the box, I'm like, wait, is this where it happened? And then when he opened the door, I was like, oh my god.
And then I was trying to like, who's next to him? Who's next to him? Who's throwing up on him?
It's like one of the other boyfriends. Unless it was one of the other boyfriends that threw up on him. We really don't know any information other than
it could have been like a swing, too. It could have been a swing playing a boyfriend.
And also, like, after that moment, the show was canceled.
The show was canceled. They were just we're done. We're just done. We cannot go on tonight.
Yeah. Exactly. So, yeah, it would be interesting to know if you had, like, zero emotional connection, what your true thoughts would have been to this. But to hear that your mom loved it as much as you is, like, a little surprising to me. All right, so to wrap this up, sadly, Company is no longer playing on Broadway, but I do think that they are announcing a national tour, so we hope. Keep out on the look for that.
I think that could be a tour that would attract a good cast, the way the Falsettos tour attracted a good cast, you know?
Maybe.
Like playing Bobby on, if they do tour this, like playing Bobby on tour, I think could be like a really meaty role for someone.
Yeah, I also like would be interested to know the success on tour because I don't know if this works for everyone, you know?
It's interesting. I hope it tours. I hope it comes here. Yeah. So I would see it again.
And we will not get into our thoughts on A Strange Loop in this episode because we will be doing a full A Strange Loop episode later this year, so look out for that. But before we end this episode, it is now time for our obsession of the week.
My obsession is related to my little New York trip, obviously, that I was on. Sunday, the day we were flying back, my parents were at the play that goes wrong. We started at 2, but I was seeing A Strange Loop. I started at 3. So I sent them off to their show, and I was like, I'm going to go hang out somewhere for an hour. And I went to hang out at the Drama Bookshop.
I'm so sad. I tried to do this when I was in between shows at MJ and 6, but there was, like, not enough time for me to get there.
We weren't going to, and then Sunday was so hot. My parents were fine. My parents who were, like, almost 60 years old were absolutely fine, and I was dying. I was like, oh, it's my delicate constitution. I was dying. So I was like, well, we need air conditioning. So we went to the Drama Bookshop, sent them off to their show, and I was just kind of like sitting at the bar area by the window on my phone, and my ears perk up because behind me I hear someone talking about The Devil Wears Prada, having seen a performance of it already, and I turn around and I was like...
And back in New York so soon, because those performances when you were there was only like day 2 or day 3. Yeah.
And I turned around and I was like, hi, sorry, I'm eavesdropping, but are you talking about The Devil Wears Prada musical? And they were like, oh my god, yes, join in. And so it was 3 other people. They were also all strangers. They did not know each other, talking about the Devil Wears Prada musical. And I joined in, and we were all talking about what we were seeing that weekend. One of them was like, so we're all seeing a matinee this afternoon, and we all like shared about what matinee we were seeing and what we'd seen that weekend. I was talking about, I was like, the day yesterday I saw Between the Lines, and one of them had been at the exact same performance as me. So we were talking about that show. And we were one of them was saying Cursed Child, and we were talking about that, and it was just such a wonderful conversation. I do not know these people's names. I will never see them again, but my obsession this week is the Drama Bookshop for creating a space for theater lovers, theater people who can go and build connections with other theater lovers, and kind of have these spontaneous conversations with each other about shows and about things that they're passionate about and things that we love. And one of the other people there was also going to Strange Loop at the 3 p.m. and we were talking about like the rush line or whatever, comparing where we sat, and he was sitting in the front row and I was sitting in the back of the mic. He's like, I'll wave at you. And we're like from across the theater.
Oh my god, that's so cute.
So it was truly a wonderful like 45-minute conversation. And then there were 4 of us kind of having this conversation, and then also like a random dad from Texas who was also jumping in every 5 seconds. He was going to the MJ matinee, and he'd seen Otis the night before with his son. They'd seen Into the Woods. They'd seen, one of them was going to see The Kite Runner that afternoon.
Oh wow.
We're just talking about everything that we had seen and we're seeing. And I was like, bragging about what we've been able to see. I was like, well, I'm from Toronto, and I have the pre-Broadway of Anne Juliet, so like, giving the tea on pre-Broadways and what we expect to happen with tours and everything, and it was just a really wonderful conversation.
I love that. I also think that like, and I don't know why I have this feeling, but like this feels just like a New York thing, because literally the exact same thing happened to me in the intermission of MJ. I sat beside these 2 people that had also bought like, I mean, I won the lottery, but they bought like very last minute rush, and all we did for 20 minutes was talk about like what shows we love. And we do this all the time, but like to hear other people's opinions of what they've seen. We also talked about Anne Juliet because they had seen it on the West End. It was just like, I don't know. We've had experiences like this too, like in the rush line, at the stage door. Like it's just such a like.
Whenever theater people get together, they're just excited.
One, we're crazy, and 2,
that's absolutely
it's just
true.
like
you're always trying to like one up. You're like, well, I've seen this. Well,
I know, it's 100%. You're like, oh, you've seen that one time? I've seen it 5 times. Like, that's what it is. It's those kind of conversations. But I wouldn't, like, have it any other way.
No,
so,
it's great. I've done this at the ballet in Toronto, talking to the person next to you, especially when you go to a show by yourself or when you're by yourself. Yeah. Striking up a conversation with the person next to you is, like, a great way to, like, pass your intermission time.
Yeah. And it also always starts when it's something that, like, you're both equally excited about or, like, losing your mind over. So, like, it's always great. Next time I'm in New York, I would love to go to the,
and it's really nice in there. I mean, it's brand new, so really beautifully designed. David Corins did the like beautiful book like installation. I think it's bigger than the previous drama bookshop, so there's more selection. And obviously you can get lots of things with Lynn's face on them.
Yeah, so his like T. Rico collection is
just lots of stuff. And you know what? If it's making the drama bookshop money to be able to continue to support itself, absolutely buy everything with Lynn's face on it.
We're here for it.
I was looking for something good to bring you back, Tara, but I was like, I just can't bring anything back with Lynn's face on it. Sorry.
I did buy Tara once for her birthday the little like baby Lin-Manuel Miranda pin.
Amazing.
And
they had those.
And like thinking about it now, we're like, what if someone saw that and be like, oh, who is that? And then you'd be like, it's Lin-Manuel Miranda as a baby. So yeah, random. There's like nothing like specific that
they have even like a slate. Is it from Tick Tick Boom or In the Heights or something?
Oh, really? Fun.
They have like props from musicals and like books and like lyrics. There's the Tony Award. The Drama Bookshop received like the special Tony Award in the shelves there that you can look at. It's a really cool space.
Oh wow. My obsession this week is like related to your New York trip, but this was like on accident. I mean, not on accident. This came out a while ago, and it was like, wow, perfect time to do this. Josh Henry on TikTok has been putting out these like mashups of pop songs with like Into the Woods music. And I saw this like a while ago. I'm pretty sure like I went to like it, but it was already liked because you definitely saw it type thing. And then I rediscovered it because like Theater's Life posted on Twitter being like, drop the album, like we need the album. So
I do.
My obsession this week is the Josh Henry, Gavin Creel mashup of Stay With Me, Sam Smith, and then Stay With Me from Into the Woods. It is so beautiful. And like, talk about masterclass performances. That show is housing some of the best voices on Broadway, as well as like the best actors on Broadway. But like vocally, no one is better than the people that are on stage.
No.
So
Josh Henry, I mean, Rapunzel's prince is kind of a nothing character, but Josh Henry is so underused in that show.
But like, I imagine everybody is like almost underused in that show. I
don't think like Philippa Sue is not, Gavin Creel is not. I mean, some of the characters are bigger and some of them are smaller, but the way that they cast every single person as a star.
What about like Julia Lester?
No, she's perfectly used. She's used a lot. No, Josh Henry and Rapunzel really don't have very much to do.
Oh, interesting.
Which they never really do, but because it's Josh Henry, I'm like, I just would like to hear Josh sing everything.
The stylings of Josh Henry.
I want to hear him sing every single song.
That voice.
Who was used perfectly? Kennedy Kanagawa playing Milky White, the star of Into the Woods.
We knew before.
I'm not even joking.
We knew
the
though.
Funniest
we knew this
part.
as soon as it came out at City Center, like encores. We knew.
And then seeing it, I'm like, this guy.
Know.
It's so funny.
Icon.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Milky White. Okay.
And then also on TikTok, just as like the second like collab, he did one with Julia Lester, which was I Know Things Now / You Gotta Be like Desiree. That one is also really, really good.
Wow.
But
I love
like,
I Know Things Now.
I don't know, Josh Henry and Gavin Creel singing together, like release the mashup album. I would download it. They are doing an Into the Woods cast recording, so whenever that comes out, I
can't wait. I'm waiting for it to come out so I can listen to it along with it and like follow along with my book. It's actually in the other one. It's in Look, I Made a Hat, not finishing the hat.
Oh.
But I want to like wait for that to come out so I can follow along with the lyrics.
Yeah.
And like read all the notes and the intro and everything.
That's fun. So that is our very, very long episode discussing Company. I'm sure Company will come up like again when we do a year in review and discuss performances. But until then, like I said on our last episode, we have a lot of like exciting things coming up, including an interview that we are so super
this is a tease.
excited
What a tease.
for. I'm not telling you who it's with, and it's also not coming out for like a couple weeks. Actually, it might be the next episode. You'll never know until it actually comes out. But this is something we're like really, really, really excited about. So to listen to that interview as well as all of our other episodes, you can subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. We would really appreciate it if you left us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. And you can also watch us on YouTube, and don't forget to subscribe.
And you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Off2BOA Podcast. That's with the number 2. And leave us a comment if you made it to the end of this episode. If you made it through an hour.
And you aren't our mothers.
And you aren't our mothers.
Yeah.
I know Mom is a supporter. But if you don't know us personally, please leave a comment. Yeah. I want to know. Yep. Okay?
And we will see you guys next time.
Bye.